Hey everybody, this is IndieGeek, and I am back with another episode of Throwback Thursday. So today I'm going to be telling you guys about Thomas Was Alone. Now, I would imagine that most people have probably played this, but for anyone who has not, or anyone who would just like to know a little bit more about the game, Thomas Was Alone is a game where all the characters are rectangles. And it was created by Mike Bithell. And basically, he is telling the story about Thomas, who is the main beginning character that you start with. And he starts out alone, but as we will quickly see, he's going to get some friends. So, as with other Throwback Thursday videos, I have finished Thomas. Not on a computer, I finished it on my PlayStation Vita, but I thought I would go back and start a new game and tell you guys a little bit about what is going on in Thomas Was Alone.
Thomas was alone. Wow, a weird first thought to have.
So, as you can see, nothing too difficult to begin with. It's pretty much your standard platformer. But, as we saw in the first level, there is going to be some narration throughout.
Thomas decided to start listing his observations for posterity. 1. The whole alone thing. 2. Portals. They led somewhere. He'd yet to work out where. 3. Falling. Thomas was absolutely fantastic at falling. He was almost as good at falling as he was at observing.
So the narration in this game is really great, and this actually, if I can get back, well, we can show it off a little bit here. It's, it looks like a really simplistic game graphically, but it's just little tiny details, like these beautiful lighting effects and the shadows that come off of Thomas. So we can kind of figure that we've got a light source coming from kind of our upper left here. And we can see the way it's, well, I guess our light source is actually probably right about there, because if I jump in it, I can completely shadow everything. But, we can see how the shadows fall around, and I think that's really nice. As well, just check out the little animation as Thomas jumps. It may be a game about, rectangles jumping around, but they're very nice looking rectangles, and we've got some interesting kind of computery looking stuff going on in the background that kind of fades in and out. Always looks nice. And one thing I do want to mention is the music in this game is absolutely fantastic.
Okay, interesting. Thomas couldn't fall past this block. Think, damn it, think. What if there was some kind of inverted fall? Some way to... what's the word? Jump. It worked! Thomas had solved the great inverted fall mystery.
So, as you can see, if you have not experienced Thomas Was Alone before...
A big jump. But Thomas noted there was no real danger in missing it. The world didn't want him to fail here. It was pushing him, but gently.
The narration is typically pretty funny. Kind of gives a...
This all seemed a little dangerous. The world was not to be trusted. It was unstable, and it seemed to Thomas that it could let him down at any moment.
So, it kind of...
It might even be doing so on purpose. Paranoia.
Sorry, that might continue to happen. I don't really want to talk over the narration, so I'm going to take a minute here and finish my train of thought. So, the narration is typically pretty funny, and I think it helps give this platformer a lot of charm. One of the reasons that I loved Thomas so much the first time, and was the funny thing is they won't just fall. It always waits for me to stand on the next one. So no need to worry, there's actually no real danger here. But one of the reasons that I loved Thomas Was Alone so much the first time, and think it's worth discussing still, is that it's not a very difficult platformer. Even as we get to the end, the levels don't necessarily get ever too difficult, but it does have quite a bit of charm that maybe not a lot of platformers do. And especially because the characters are all just rectangles, and you'll see as we go on, you actually do start to kind of feel for the rectangles. And you can actually feel some real genuine emotions about the rectangles here.
Thomas wondered whether the portals were actually taking him anywhere. He felt like he was making progress, but there wasn't really any way to know. He seemed to be moving predominantly up and to the right, which might, or might not, be important.
So I was going to mention about the music. I believe it was composed in such a way that at times the music is
paranoia again, but Thomas could have sworn the world was becoming more complicated. It always seemed to be one step ahead of his skills.
The music was composed to be
designed just for him. He wondered why. Was the world testing him? No, too obvious.
The music was composed to be at times randomly generated, which kind of makes it always feels like the soundtrack is new, even if you've played through the entire game, even if you've played through the entire game more than once. The soundtrack always feels pretty new to me every time I play.
Something about the boiling, toxic, glowing water intimidated Thomas. He didn't like it. He certainly didn't want to swim in it.
So, as we can see,
another mental note. 4. Water. Not good. To be avoided.
these are our respawn points. So we will just respawn there if we fall, which is nice, because some of the levels do start to get a little lengthy. And if I remember correctly, the game is split into...
The loneliness was getting to Thomas. No amount of observation or obsessive note-taking could combat that.
I believe it's split into 10 chapters, and each chapter has 10 levels, so we should be coming up here on the end of chapter 1. And let's see, for anyone who does not know about the developer, he is actually working on a new game called Volume. So I think what I will do, as always, I will link to the Steam page to buy this game if you have not bought it before. And I think I will also link to Mike Bithel's website so that you can check out his new game Volume. It is totally different and it looks very good. I guess the best way to explain Volume is it's kind of like a mix of...
theory. The world was training him. He could feel himself getting smarter. There was the mental list to consider. Over the minutes and seconds since his spontaneous generation, he'd become a pretty skilled jumper.
His
was evolving. He just wished he had someone to share it with.
His new game is best described as kind of a mix between like Metal Gear Solid style gameplay and like Legos. Does that make sense? It's hard to explain unless you actually see it. But one of the biggest strengths I think that Thomas has is that it's really, really accessible. I've talked about my girlfriend on here a couple times, and discussed that she does not always find games to be very easy, and just kind of struggles with the controls for the most part, and then her problem with platformers is that they tend to be a little too difficult. But she found
Chris
playing
took
Thomas was
immediate
fine.
Deep dislike to the skinny red rectangle. Who the hell did this Thomas think he was?
That's the greatest. I think it's really pretty neat that. So as we see here, if I move Thomas out of the way, Chris can't get up on his own. So each of the characters has their own little kind of personality to them, and you get to know all the characters just through the way that they interact with each other.
Chris had been doing fine. He wasn't the highest jumper, but he'd held his own. He'd even been graceful at times. Well, not technically graceful, it's probably the wrong word, but fine. There was that skinny little runt leaping about like he owned the place.
But as I said, I think it's important to have some platformers out there that are accessible to, to people who might not normally feel comfortable playing platformers. Like, not everyone is ready to jump into something like Super Meat Boy, which, requires a lot of patience. But with Thomas, there aren't really many ways to lose a bunch of progress. Like, even if I fell into the water here, I'm only going to respawn right there, so it's not like I lost a bunch of time doing that. And I think that's an important concept.
Okay, this was more like it. A glowy white thing. Only Chris could get to it, which of course made it all the more enticing. What would it do? What new opportunity might this switch open up to him?
So I guess...
Grace. Another chance for Thomas to jump slightly higher than Chris. How fortunate. Seriously, this made the whole switch pressing thing entirely worthwhile.
So, I guess what I would say for this game is if if you're a fan of platformers and you haven't played Thomas, you should. And even if you're not, if you're looking for a platformer that is fairly simple and relaxing, that's like the biggest feeling I get from whenever I play Thomas, is that I always feel relaxed. And I think...
Was this good? Because on the surface, it did not seem good. Chris was pretty scared. Little Red seemed fine, happy to be on his merry little adventure. Chris couldn't shake the feeling that things had taken a significant turn for the worse since Thomas had joined him. Sure, he'd been able to piggyback his way to ever so slightly higher platforms, but where had that got him? Well, to ever so slightly higher platforms, which was sort of his point.
So, I played through all of Thomas, and I don't think I ever got to a point where I was, confused on what I needed to do to solve a puzzle. Which, I think that's important. And I feel the same way about stuff like Super Meat Boy. Like, Super Meat Boy's level design is also very, very well done. But with Super Meat Boy, sometimes...
Chris stared at Thomas with pure hatred. He seemed so very happy at their situation. Friends together, a brave fellowship of quadrilaterals on a quest for greatness. That would be fine. But it was all the obvious observation that Thomas was doing which grated. Every time they saw something vaguely new, Chris would hear a satisfied little from the vaulting idiot. He hoped the next portal would split them up, if only for a few levels.
So, Thomas isn't about being a difficult platformer. It's really just about having fun. It's about telling a story, and I think it's a story that anyone can get behind, I think everyone has felt times in their life when they may have been lonely, and I think that people can feel for Thomas. Especially with our first character here, we see that he finally found someone that could be a friend, and unfortunately Chris doesn't like him. Chris is, he's kind of being a jerk. And he's got no reason to be mean to Thomas, he doesn't even know Thomas. So, it's just those kind of interactions. And what's interesting is that people have managed to put kind of a lot more than there actually is there.
He knew that this was his chance, a moment to shine. This was game day.
And what I mean by that is that, you know, people kind of attach themselves to a certain character in the game, and they kind of start to see things in that character that maybe Mike Bithell didn't explicitly write in the character, and I think that's really interesting.
John needed room to show off his exceptional skills. As it was, he was trapped on the wrong side of these little dot things. Where did they come from, anyway?
So I think I'm going to finish up this chapter, which probably only has another level or two. And then, yeah, it looks like 2 more levels, and then I'm going to call it good.
John inhaled the air of the open space, and it smelled of awesome. Time to flex those muscles, to put his training to use, time to show those little dots how it was done.
So, you know,
decided to press the switch to let the little dots catch up with him. John cared for his new allies.
so you know, what's kind of fun is
from the sympathetic expression he practiced in the mirror
in addition to their actual personalities, the characters all have their own jumping ability as well, and for the most part, their jumping ability does kind of fit with their personalities, which I think is kind of fun. I do really want to just mention again just how incredible all the art is in this game. You know, it might sound a little bit silly because we are really just looking at a bunch of rectangles, but it just goes to show you how much you can do with just a few rectangles. You can really make something that's very lovely without really much there to work with, and I think that's interesting. So, you know, as you can see, like I said, the levels aren't particularly difficult, but, you know, it's not so much about being difficult. I don't know about you, but, like, even though I've played the game, even though I have heard all this dialogue before, I'm still having a blast listening to the dialogue again.
He felt it was important to his image that he was seen to help the little guys.
You know, and you do kind of start to get a sense of what each character is all about. And considering the characters are just rectangles, you know, you don't have any, I mean, you know, it's not like a movie. You can't see emotions on their faces, or, you know, they don't really have dialogue. They've got inner monologues, which I think is an interesting way to do something like dialogue. But, you know, they don't have, like, any visible emotions that we can see. And I think, considering that fact, you know, the fact that we can still feel for these rectangles really goes a long way to, you know, telling just how good Mike Bithell is at telling a story. I think as story creators, people often rely on, you know, for example, in a movie, people would often rely on their actors kind of visibly showing the emotions that they wanted to express. And I think it really says a lot about Mike Bithell as a writer, that
he didn't mind them so
he doesn't
much.
have that crutch.
The red one, Thomas, had a charming way of applauding every time John jumped.
I think this is the last level of the chapter, in which case, when it's done, I am going to kind of wrap up my thoughts for you guys. And you know, like I said, I will leave you the links, because if you have not played Thomas Was Alone, I definitely think that you should consider picking it up. And I kind of give that a...
The angry orange one was less immediately likeable, but his unremitting cynicism and tutting amused John.
I kind of give that recommendation pretty much just like a blanket recommendation for everyone. I can't imagine anyone not liking Thomas. Everyone that I've seen play it, everyone that I've sat next to while they played it, I've never had someone tell me this isn't really for me, because that's from what I've noticed, that's not really something that people feel about Thomas. I think it's just the charm that's in Thomas, the likable characters, and the really simple gameplay. It's tight gameplay. It's not simple because it needs to be.
Interesting. A floating target. This would require coordination, balance, and timing. John was sure the dots would be lost, but he was happy to guide them to triumph.
It's simple because Mike Bithell wanted to make a game that anyone could enjoy, and I think that's pretty important. And he did it in a way that I don't think it doesn't feel too casual. I still enjoy my time with it, and I've played tons of platformers, so I think it's done in a way that is really, really well done.
Maybe that's what the dots were for. They were there to extend John's reach, to make his performance even more impressive. John liked the thought. He decided to keep them.
Okay, so with that, we are about to enter into the third chapter, which means we are also about to find a new character, and I'm sure everyone wants to know about Claire. So we've kind of got this auto-scroller down.
She was rubbish at jumping, and she moved slowly. She felt a little like her continued existence was breaking some kind of natural order.
Aww.
The crumbling pillar was a dramatic death, she supposed. Wait, what? Claire couldn't shake the feeling that she was not, in fact, dead. It was at that moment that Claire realized she had superpowers.
So, with that, I'm going to call this video to an end. But let me know in the comments, if you have played Thomas, let me know what your opinions on it. Let me know if you think that it is as good of a game as I like. And I think, I felt that it was worthy enough to bring back for my Throwback Thursday series. I thought it was a good enough game that it was worth kind of re-exploring a while after I beat it. And if if you're interested in seeing me play more of it and hearing more of what I think about the game, let me know, because if I receive some comments saying so, I could definitely see myself doing a short little Let's Play of it. This was, this was about a fifth of the game in like a 20-minute episode, so it wouldn't be too unreasonable to go ahead and finish up the game. But, as I said, Thomas is a very pretty game, both visually and sound-wise. Excuse me. And, I think it's a game that really anyone could enjoy. I think it is a game that is made very well and is fun and really has, it's really got kind of a heartwarming story to it. So, with that being said, I really, really hope that you guys enjoyed looking at Thomas Was Alone if you had not seen it before, and I really hope you enjoyed hearing my thoughts on it if you have. So, if you like the kind of content I produce, please subscribe to my channel. And if you like the Throwback Thursday series, please, hit the like button there. Let me know that you want to see more Throwback Thursdays, because that could help me out a lot. With that being said, I thank you very much for watching, and I will